I've installed the extension to the dust extraction system to go over to the jointer. It's just that small length of pipe that runs along there to another one of my homemade blast gates. You can check the link to see how I made that. I've got a full video on how to make that blast gate. And I've got this flexi tube here. Currently that's all I've got at the moment. Now the idea is for that to connect somehow to the jointer. I just wanted to make this whole project out of scrap timber, so I started with some 16mm melamine and cut out that hole for the plastic shroud you just saw. I have no idea where I got that plastic shroud from. It just was in my workshop, and it was a perfect size, so I used it. I cut the edges at a 30-degree angle. That was the angle I wanted to use to go from front to back, and I just cut that out. This is the bottom piece. I just cut that out of some, I think that's 12mm MDF, and yeah, just cut that on the bandsaw. And then to get a good glue joint, I scraped off some of the melamine on the end there. But at the moment I'm just dry fitting the pieces because I wanted to make sure that everything fit together properly before I did the final glue up. Then using the base, I took a measurement for the side pieces and cut that to width. Then I marked that corner on the board, and knowing the measurement at the back that the shroud had to end up at, I just took that measurement, drew a line, and that gave me the angle to cut the side pieces at. So I just took them over to the bandsaw, cut them out, and then using that angle that I just cut, I adjusted the blade on the table saw and then cut the top of the front face to that same angle so that the side pieces would match. And again, I just drilled them and dry fitted them. Then I just marked out the last piece, which is going to be the top piece of the shroud. Marked that up on the MDF and again cut that out on the bandsaw. Again, I just dry fitted this piece just so to make sure that I was happy with the size and shape of the shroud. And once I was, then it was just time to glue it up, so glued it all together. I used the clamps here to clamp those vulnerable corners of the melamine so that they wouldn't split when I put the screws in. So I left that overnight to dry, and then the next thing was to put the plastic shroud in. So I just ran a bead of silicone around the edge and slipped it into place, and then finished it off with attaching a few screws. Now, to mount the shroud to the cabinet of the jointer, I needed some sort of faceplate or flange, so I used another piece of 12mm MDF and just marked it out. Left a bit of a lip on the inside, give it something to stick to, put it for a bit of silicone or whatever, and yeah, just marked out the inside. Used the jigsaw to cut that out. And then it was just a matter of gluing that faceplate to the shroud. Glue was going to be strong enough to hold this together, considering that it wasn't, the pieces aren't big enough really to take any nails or screws anyway. So to mount the shroud onto the jointer, I wanted to use existing screws and screw holes, so I marked those 3 top screws first, drilled them out, And then using this piece of tracing paper, I attached it to the jointer and marked where the existing holes were, and then took it back to the shroud. Just a matter of lining up those top 3 holes and then marking with a pencil the other 4 holes on the side. Drilled them out, and that would allow me to mount the shroud onto the machine using all the existing holes that were already in the cabinet. I just ran a bead of silicone around the inside of the faceplate just to get a good seal on the machine. Although I was painting the shroud the same colour as the machine, I still masked it up because I was using a brush to paint the shroud, but the machine had a very nice smooth spray finish, so I didn't want to really get brush marks on my lovely smooth spray finish on the cabinet. Once the paint on the shroud had dried, then it was time just to connect the flexible hose. And I always just use duct tape to connect things like this because they're easily undone. Next thing to do was just to make some sort of right angle bracket to mount to the floor of the workshop and also to the side of the blast gate, so that when I operated the blast gate it wouldn't basically move. I needed to just make it more rigid. I first drilled pilot holes in all the pieces because some of these smaller pieces might split when screwed without a pilot hole. And then in the top pieces I just used a clearance bit for the screws to go through. Last thing to do was to mount the remote switch to turn on the dust extraction system, and basically that was it.